Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Kaylee and I talk all about what intentional living looks like for me. And I hope that in watching, you can also find some ways to be more intentional in your own life. Today, we're going to talk about our February of 2025 budget update, as well as budgeting for March of 2025. We're doing a little bit of a low buy or no buy year, focusing more on experiences and debt repayment than we are frivolous purchases. However, we're all human, so this gives you a very human look at someone tackling that while also still incurring some unexpected expenses and just trying to manage what we can. So first, I want to take you back to the January update and budgeting for February video so that you can remember when I said this. I had such high hopes going into this month, okay? Such high hopes going into this month because also looking historically, last year, January and February were our two best months. We stuck to our budget really, really well and still felt like we had a good month. We still had some social outings. We still, ate really good food and went out with friends, but we just did so in a way that stayed inside of our budget. So my hope was that we could repeat that and do that again this February. What I did not anticipate was a number of things, actually. So I want to talk about those first before we get into kind of the normal wrap-up questions. So what happened? One, I think it was the day after I started putting in our taxes because I would rather submit them earlier rather than later. I started putting in all of the information into our taxes based on how it went for us last year. I anticipated a small refund, but a refund and not an amount owed. Instead, what I got was an amount owed of $2,124. I was so not okay because I had just filmed that video where I was like, you know what? We're going to go into this month. We're going to stick to our budget no matter what. I don't care what happens. And that amount changes everything. It makes it completely impossible to fully stay within the budget amount. Now, what I did do instead of paying that in February was I delayed it until March. So I'll actually talk more about that in my March budgeting portion of this video, which I actually filmed yesterday. And there's a funny story with that that's coming up. But I did submit our taxes in February, and therefore I did have a cost of $105.75 to pay in February that was unexpected to submit our tax return. The other thing that I was budgeting for March that we actually ended up needing to purchase in February was dog food for our dog. So we completely ran out of that. I waited until the last day and it was still in the month of February. So therefore that amount wasn't budgeted for, but it needed to be purchased. So that's on the yellow light purchases that we'll talk about later. But that was another purchase that, again, even with my planning of trying to see and anticipate what we probably need to repurchase each month, sometimes I miss something. I'm doing this completely unmarried and unjewelried. Does anyone else feel absolutely naked once they realize that they didn't put on the normal jewelry that they wear? And I don't wear a lot of it. So it's not like I'm missing a lot, but I just realized that I don't have on my rings or my earrings. Oh my gosh. Two other things that came up. So in my February budget video, I said that there was going to be $0 going into our travel budget. That changed because I found flights under $800 a piece to go to the Netherlands. And that is something that was high on our priority list to do this year, specifically at the time that I bought the tickets for. And to get tickets that low in the spring is typically impossible. And so I jumped on it the minute I saw those tickets drop. So it went from budgeting $0 to budgeting $1,594.62 because that was the cost of 2 tickets. That was a purchase that was made after finding out what we owed for taxes. And so once I kind of came down from the panic that ensued after finding out the amount that we owed in taxes, we still felt like this was a really high priority for us this year and went ahead and bought the tickets when they were available at that cost. And then the final thing was to get an additional Roth contribution in before I submitted our taxes. So typically I just put $100 per month into my Roth IRA, but at the end of every tax year, tax season, I submit a one-time payment to kind of boost it a little bit for the year prior. This has not been something that I have done that maxes it out because that's a very large amount. And hopefully once our debt is paid off, that will increase over time. However, right now I just added an additional $1,500 to be taken out and put into the Roth. So that is calculated into our savings amount when I show you the pie chart for February's expenses. The last thing is something silly. Now, it wasn't silly yesterday. So yesterday is actually when I filmed the March budgeting portion of the video. So you will see me in a completely different place in a completely different outfit when we get to that part of the video. So if you'll remember, right when I finished filming the budgeting video for February, I realized we were going to owe that amount in taxes. Well, about 30 or 40 minutes after filming the March budgeting portion of the video yesterday, I got a text from my husband that he had a flat tire, and I went into an immediate worst case scenario spiral about how much money that was going to cost to replace the tire. Now, luckily, we didn't actually have to replace the tire. They were able to fix it and they did it free of charge, but I really felt so defeated when I tried to set myself up well with expectation for March. It all came crashing down 30 to 40 minutes later. And then by the end of the night, last night, everything was fine again because we didn't have to pay for a new tire. Just know the ups and downs are real. And it's what I don't see a lot of people talking about, both in my personal life and in a space like this. And so I always want to make sure that I am talking about those things because we feel very alone otherwise. I feel very alone otherwise. We made it through. Here we are talking about February's expenses on Friday, February 28th. So again, there is a little bit of day left, but I am committed to not spending another dollar until tomorrow, March 1st, because I do have plans immediately tomorrow to spend money. But no money is getting spent on February 28th. What was I feeling in February? I was feeling a lot of things, and not many of them positive things. I was feeling incredibly defeated, very stressed and overwhelmed. After finding out about that tax amount, my kind of mental state for the rest of the month tanked. And when that happens, one, I no longer care about our budget because I feel like control has been ripped from me by an unexpected expense, and therefore me trying to control whatever I can that I have left feels like it expends too much energy. So instead, I just want to throw caution to the wind and say, whatever, we can spend whatever we want, we can do whatever we want, it doesn't matter because we have to pay this tax amount and we weren't planning for that, and so everything's screwed anyways. Forget about it. Which is the approach that I took for a couple of days. And once my husband becomes the voice of reason, I have to realize something's up. I've done something. I've split from the intention a lot more than I anticipated to. So even yesterday, after the flat tire fiasco, I had expended so much energy mentally and emotionally on trying to figure out how to remedy that scenario that I had zero motivation to cook, which is what I needed to do. It's what I should have done. And I was not in a place where that would have been helpful for me. or where that would have been helpful for my relationship with my husband last night. So we got Little Caesars pizza. Okay? Those are the kinds of things that happen when my mentality around how our budget is going tanks. And it's not always with food necessarily. Sometimes it's with purchases of an item that is on a definite no buy list. But this month it happened with food purchases. Sometimes it looks like comfort eating, but most of the time it looks like completely zapped of energy and not wanting to cook. And I also noticed less motivation in my day-to-day life this month, which I think was partly because of, again, the mental energy that was going into trying to figure out how to remedy the next couple of months with the tax payment needing to happen, as well as lower overall energy this month. Brecker is sunbathing right now, and I'm trying not to bring attention to myself or to him too much, but he's very cute. Okay. I put this reminder in the other video, and I want to just say it again. If you're new here, I say my money a lot, my budget, my money, but that equals our money, our budget. Me and my husband share 100% of our finances. So anytime I'm talking numbers, this is both of our numbers, it's both of our incomes and both of our expenses. All right, let's take a look at our pie chart. It looks much better this month than it did last month, because last month you might remember that we had a grad school payment. It was the last one. So this pie chart looks a little bit different and looks a little bit more like it will going forward, except in March, we're going to see that tax payment come in, and that's going to be a rough time, but it's okay. We carry on. So the categories are savings and retirement, groceries, eating out, insurance, rent and utilities, subscriptions, gas, travel, loan repayment, business expenses, and miscellaneous. 11 categories, and all of these categories have an amount in them. We're going to go from largest to smallest. And then after we look at this pie chart, I am going to say the exact numbers that we budgeted and that we spent for each category. But this kind of shows a breakdown of the percentages for where all of our money went this month. So savings and retirement was the highest percentage, which hasn't happened in a while. And I am grateful that we're in a place where that was true this month. So savings and retirement was 26.3% of our overall budget. Rent and utilities was right under that at 23%, and travel was at 20.2%. So those are the biggest three chunks of our pie. The next highest amount is miscellaneous, which is 7.8% of our spending. And I will also break down which purchases in that category were red, yellow, and green light. The next category is insurance at 6.8%. And again, if you'll remember, this is higher this month than it will be any other month because our rental insurance was due, which is paid annually. Eating out was 5.1%. Groceries was 4.2%. Loan repayment was 3.9%. Gas was 1.9%. And then we have business at 0.5% and subscriptions at 0.2%. I really like seeing this breakdown because, again, in the overall grand scheme of how I was feeling, I wouldn't have thought that savings and retirement was actually the biggest piece of the pie, the biggest amount that we put towards something this month. And so that's a really encouraging thing for me to see, and why I like looking at the breakdown of numbers in multiple ways. So I'm quickly just going to go through the amounts that we budgeted for in each category and the amount that we actually ended up spending. And this is going to be in a little bit of a different order because I'm just going to do it based on how it is in the spreadsheet. So for groceries, we budgeted $275, but ended up spending $329.89. In the eating out category, we budgeted $300 and we ended up spending $403.94. Rent and utilities, we budgeted the exact amount that we ended up paying, which was right around $1,800. Subscriptions, we budgeted $16.99 and only spent $16.99. For gas, we budgeted $180. we spent $152.58. For travel, like I said, initially we budgeted $0, and then I just changed that amount to the exact cost for our flights, which was $1,594.62. For loan repayment, we just made our normal payment on the car, which was $311.43. For insurance, I budgeted $540 and ended up spending $537.30. For business, I budgeted $40 and spent $42.48. And for miscellaneous and personal, we budgeted $475 and ended up spending $616.58. Like I said, with how I was feeling this month, none of these numbers are really shocking to me. Of course, I wish we were able to stay in the budgeted amounts, but to know that we still had some savings left over, as in we spent less than we made this month, which is really great. I feel decent about the numbers. If you're curious, our overall budget was $5,548.33, and we ended up spending $5,821.10, which was an overspend of the budgeted amount by $272.77. However, based on our income and the amount that we spent, we still saved $482.03. So I'm pretty happy with that. Next month is what I'm really scared for with the tax amounts coming out. But it's fine. 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 Now, that miscellaneous category where we spent $616.58 is where I put the breakdown for our red, yellow, and green light purchases. Because in our low and no buy, we're trying to not purchase items that are not essential. We're going to mess that up. We're just going to. And I think allowing for some of that error makes it a lot easier to stomach when we mess up. But it's also quite encouraging that even though we messed up this month, we didn't mess up as much as I thought we did when I actually break down the numbers. The big amount is $616.58. Out of that amount, our red light purchases were $104.62. That included a coffee outing. When I went to pick up my husband's bag of coffee, I treated myself to a cup of coffee, but that was part of our absolute no purchases for that month. But I did it anyways. So that was on there. I also purchased a book for my husband, the first book purchase of 2025. He was thrilled with it. So I'm glad that I got it, but they're really hard books to find. And so when I found it at the price that I found it, I snagged it. So that was another purchase. And then a notebook for my husband. Technically, I could have put this under yellow light, but it was something that was kind of unexpected that he needed versus something that we knew was going to need to be purchased. We just didn't know when it needed to be purchased. Another expense on this list was a place called Lucky's. It's a beverage store here in Woodstock, and that was an unexpected expense and a non-essential expense. Another expense was parking. Again, in downtown Roswell. We love going to downtown Roswell, and you do typically have to pay to park if you want to park quickly and close to where you're trying to get to. Finally, another purchase for an event that I'm going to be attending in March, but I had to pay for the ticket in February. So that was a red light purchase because it was a last minute thing, but I really wanted to go, so made the purchase. Now for our yellow light purchases, these are purchases that we didn't budget for but needed to happen. So the two yellow light purchases in February were from Hollywood Feed, which was the food for our dog, and TurboTax. And then our green light list was all of the things that we talked about budgeting for in my budgeting for February video. So those were the items that we needed from Target, the 2-pound bag of coffee, deodorant refills, heartworm protection for the dog, and 1 physical therapy appointment. So that wraps up the overview of February's spending. I'm going to throw it over to yesterday's Kaylee to take you through budgeting for March. Hello from the past. You just finished watching the clip of me talking about the February budget wrap up and update, and I actually haven't even filmed that yet. Currently, I'm going to talk about March intentions and hopes and start budgeting for March, but I'm actually going to film the part that you just finished watching tomorrow. So I hope everything went well. In February, my hope was that we stayed within our budget, and I kind of hope that again in March. I mean, don't you hope that every month? Don't you hope that when you're putting in all of the effort to budget and you're putting in the effort of looking ahead and making sure that you're well prepared for the upcoming month, you kind of hope that you're able to stay within the bounds of that budget and still feel like you had a really good, fulfilling month. So that's what I hope for March. I hope we're able to stay in budget, and I hope that we have a really fulfilling month. The other thing that I hope, which we'll kind of get into when we start talking about the numbers, is that both with an unexpected cost that we are going to be paying in March and with our normal loan repayment plan, that we will be able to accomplish both of those things without it feeling like it's strapping us or it's causing us not to be able to exist the way we want to and spend money the way we want to in the month of March. So while I hope that we're able to stick to a pretty limited budget due to an unexpected expense, I also hope that we are social if we want to be social, and that we still eat really good, nourishing food and all of those things in the month of March. And that's kind of where my mentality is when it comes to spending money, specifically on food. Food is not something that I am willing to completely cut back on. There are definitely meals where it's just some pasta and some sauce because that's what we have in the pantry. But I also want there to be the option of fresh fruit and vegetables and really thought out homemade recipes and the ability to go out to eat for a really good meal as well. So goals and intentions for March: stay within the budget, feel really fulfilled and like we have spent our money the way that we wanted to this month and not just the way that we felt like we had to, and prioritizing nourishment both socially and via food. If saving is possible, that would be great. We do have some trips coming up that would be nice for it to come out of a bit of a sinking fund rather than our normal month-to-month amounts. But let's jump into the numbers. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to look at upcoming needs and expenses. So these are those items that you need to buy because they ran out, or things that come around every so often but are products to purchase. This month, that looks like a lot of self-care items or self-hygiene items. So we have toothpaste, a hair mask for me, beard wash for my husband, shampoo for my husband, and glass cleaner for the house, as well as a lip mask for me. The total amount of those items is around $70. And then I would also like to do at least one 1-hour physical therapy session this coming month, which puts the total anticipated budget around $180. That seems really low based on the trends of our spending. And so I'm going to bump that up to $300 and give quite a bit of a buffer, because I look at that number and feel like I have to be forgetting something. And it's very likely that I am. I forgot dog food last month. I thought we would be able to make it to March, but we weren't able to. And I forgot that with submitting taxes in February, I had to pay for the taxes in February. I had to pay the fee to submit our taxes in February. There are probably going to be some hidden expenses that aren't completely unexpected, but that I just didn't think about in this process. So I am putting our miscellaneous and personal spending at $300. Typically that's somewhere around $400 to $500. So that seems low still, but we are also trying to really cut back in the month of March due to a larger expense that we're talking about in a second. So the next kind of category that I look at when budgeting for a new month are one-off or recurring expenses. Last month, this was our renter's insurance that we pay annually. It was due in February. This month is a much larger amount and is a very unexpected expense, and that is $2,124 for taxes. I don't want to talk about it, but we will. So in me becoming self-employed, running a business, as well as doing some part-time work, and my husband having a full-time job, in all of that transition, 2024 was the first full calendar year of that change. And what we should have done that we didn't do is update our W-4s at any place that we submit a W-4. The reason for that is we didn't know. I think that information around taxes is something that I really wish was taught in our school system, or at least in our college system, and that it was a required class, because I have learned a lot about finances. I have learned a lot about making sure your money is working for you, making sure you're taking care of your money well. But taxes are something that continually bite me in the ass every single time. And I don't know I don't know what to do about it. So here we are again. We have budgeted $2,124 to come out of our account at the beginning of March to cover our tax amount that is owed. I hate it. I hate it so much. So that is a giant chunk of our budget and completely feels like it's derailing my plans that I had for the next 2 or 3 months, but it's fine. It's just one of those adult things that you have to take care of. So the next step in planning for the month ahead is to look at the calendar. So I have our calendar pulled up right here, and based on this, I know that we have 11 nights where Jonathan will not be at home and therefore does not need to be factored into the dinner plans for those evenings. So we have 20 nights left in the month where I need to plan for dinner for the both of us. I'm guesstimating that 15 of those I can cook meals at home, and that 5 of those we will have meals out or pick something up fast. I would love to say that all of those 20 nights I would cook, but I have a limited amount of energy. And I know that those nights where it's really hard for me, I would be more resentful of the fact that I felt like I needed to cook because of our budget versus knowing that we put in a buffer for roughly 5 nights of takeout or of going out. So just looking at that number, that can kind of help me set up our grocery budget. So we'll do that first. And then we'll look back at the calendar for social events or other things that would cause us to eat out so that we can craft that budget. So 20 nights for both of our dinners and roughly 6 nights of me eating dinner at home by myself, and then breakfasts and lunches and all of those things. So I want to do a little bit more than $50 a week. So I'm going to set the grocery budget at $350. Now going back to the calendar and looking at our social events, I know that I'm going to brunch with some friends on March 1st. I know that I'm going out for a wino bingo night on March 11th. And I know that we have at least 2 couples friends that we would like to get together with in the month of March. So 5 nights eating out, the 2 of us, plus some of those social events. Thinking about the 5 nights that we're giving ourselves a buffer of, I'm roughly budgeting $30 per meal, though I think it's probably less because often we go to places where it's $25 or less, but giving that $30 per meal gives a buffer and kind of allows for 1 or 2 of those meals to be a larger amount. So that would be $150 for the 5 nights. And then we have our social events. So I'm going to put it at $280 for our eating out budget, which is a lower amount than I typically would budget for. But again, with that tax amount being on this month's budget and with wanting to still pay on student loans and our car, it's got to be a little bit tighter this month. Now that all of that is looked at, we have our grocery budget set at $350, our eating out budget set at $280, and our miscellaneous and personal budget set at $300. And then the final budget amount that I look at our calendar for is our gas budget. Again, just because of the buddy outings and the caretaking that we do for my sister and her friend. We're not doing too much more caretaking this month than we were last month. However, there is an entire week where Jonathan will be staying at the home of someone that we caretake for, and that commute to his work will be a bit longer. So I am going to bump the gas budget up to $190 and hope that gives enough of a buffer. My business budget for this month, I did incur an additional recurring expense of $20 per month for Adobe Creative Cloud, primarily to make life easier for my husband so that he can use Premiere Pro to edit these videos. So that changes things a little bit when I look at my business budget, but looking at the month ahead and then looking at the budget itself, I think $50 should still be fine. And then we have some things that I already know exactly how much they're going to be. And so therefore in my budget spreadsheet, I put exactly how much they're going to be. One of those things is subscriptions, which is just Spotify for $16.99. The other is our insurance amount, which is $379.41, which covers our umbrella, car, and life insurance policies. And then our rent and utility amount. I do put our cell phone bill and our internet bill into rent and utilities, and so that amount is right around $18.50 for the month. So finally, the last thing is loans. I anticipated paying $1,000 to my husband's undergrad loan amount and our normal payment of $311.43 to our car payment. And at first, when I knew that we were going to have to pay, over $2,000 for taxes, I got a little scared because I didn't know how we were going to do that and still pay on the student loan amount. And I thought, you know what? We have been paying every 3 months over $4,000 for his grad school. And even though we did overspend in 2024, we still incurred no additional debt, either for student loans for his grad degree or consumer debt. And so I don't want to go into every month scared. I want to try and stick to our plan as much as possible. So the reason that some of these other categories are significantly or slightly lower than they typically are is because I'm really hoping that we can continue towards the plan that we had for tackling our debt and pay $1,000 on the student loan and pay our car payment of $311.43, which isn't really optional. That one has to get paid. But the $1,000 on the student loan debt is optional, but I don't want to treat it as optional. I want to budget for it. So I have actually already scheduled a payment for March 10th of $1,000 to cover that so that it just happens whether I want it to or not, whether I am panicked at that point or not. It is out of my hands at this point. We are paying $1,000 on the student loans and we are paying our normal monthly payment on our car, and we're paying $2,141 to the IRS. The other amount that will be coming out of our account but is still savings is my contribution to my Roth IRA. And we also do have medical insurance and my husband has a 401k, but both of those expenses come directly out of his paycheck. So I don't even factor them into our budget because that's happening behind the scenes. And I'm not having to schedule those payments or make sure that those bills are getting paid because they're coming straight out of his paycheck. So I think that has us squared away for March. It's going to be a fun month. There's a lot going on our calendar, but I think with the budget that we've set out and with the work that we are doing, I am hoping to, one, stay within the budget, and two, to earn more than we spend this month. I think it's possible. I have a really cool business opportunity coming up. I'm hopeful that it will happen in March. It might be in April, but either way, I think we have set ourselves up for success with this budget as much as we could with the additional payment for taxes coming out. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful for you or gave you some motivation to sit down and tackle your budget for March. Until next time.